What is up, you guys? The market continues to have that upward momentum. And if you've been watching my videos for the last week or two, you kind of know why I believe that is the case. But I want to look at this article, which I found this morning. I thought it was pretty good. And it kind of gives an alternative reasoning for that. There are some points in it I agree with, some points in it I disagree with. But overall, I do like the article. So I just want to look at that. But yeah, before we can get into that, I guess I'll just very quickly kind of go over again why, or at least why it makes sense to me why the market is just continuing to go up, right? And it's more or less just from a technical analysis standpoint. I mean, it makes sense in terms of everything that all the patterns that have been repeating themselves for the past 7 or 8 months. Kind of no shock, no surprise. Boom, boom, boom. A lot of people are expecting this upward move. It's almost as if the market for this last move had nowhere else to go except to do essentially what it's doing now. Doesn't necessarily mean we're guaranteed we're going to touch on this trend line, but it seems pretty likely at this point, or at least get close to it. A lot of scenarios. But just from this technical analysis perspective, I mean, I think it goes without saying at this point that good news has not really influenced the market. Bad news seems to cause some dips, but the market seems to even out within a day or two, so it doesn't really crash from bad news. Granted, there wasn't a ton of bad news in the last 6 to 7 months. However, there have been some things that people, I guess, got bummed out about, including those ETF rejections, and that's a little about what the article talks about as well, so that's why I do want to jump into that. But again, real quick, before we do get into it, the bottom line at this point is 6K the bottom, or roughly 5,700, because that's basically what the bottom was the last two times it touched, 58, 58, and then prior to that was 57, so right around that area. And the bounce that came kind of dramatically in the middle of August was good reassurance that potentially that could be the bottom. And so, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see about that. As well, shorts, I think, played a big role in the movement of the market. You know, when they got all the way up here, I think everyone was expecting, like, hey, these have to go down pretty much. And you can see they clearly did to end August. They clearly were liquidated. Shorts were definitely brought down, I believe, from about 40K all the way down to half of that, 20K. Currently, they're going up pretty drastically again, around 33K, almost back to only 7K away from what they were at the height, kind of almost near the end of August there. But this article is titled "Clear-Headed Response to Crypto ETF Rejections Drove Bitcoin Price to $7,100" is what this analyst says. So the article starts off, what's behind the recent Bitcoin rally to 7,100? Michael Moore, the CEO of Genesis Trading and Genesis Capital, thinks that the market's stable reaction to SEC's ETF rejections last week played a big role. And that's, I said at the beginning of the video, I think that there are things I agree with and things I disagree with, and I do agree with that. I do think that the fact that the market did not overreact once, like, I think it was 8 or 9 ETFs were all kind of simultaneously rejected on the same day there. I think the fact that the market reacted kind of with a stable feel, or, you know, the market didn't plunge because of that news, I think that did play a big role in ascertaining like confidence in the market, because ETF talk was like the talk of the town for the prior like 2 months or so, right? And then pretty much we get the opposite news all at once, being like, you know, an ETF doesn't really seem likely. And the price didn't really die off from that, which is good. And I think that kind of helped cement some support there. Now, there are some specifics that the article gets into that I don't necessarily agree with. I don't think you can ever really be super specific about like prices, especially in this market. I mean, so it says here, if the 7,100 price holds for 1 to 2 weeks, the bulls will return, he said, and a $10,000 Bitcoin is a likely possibility. I don't necessarily know if we hold 7,100 for a week or two, 10,000 is very likely. Right now, the biggest resistance is right in this area right here. And this is in my opinion, but just like the 200-day moving average, the trend line here, those are two huge things. That coupled with the fact that the lower high was right around 84, 8,500, and we haven't broken lower highs at all throughout the last like 7 months, right? We haven't broken any of these. So, I mean, if we are able to get pretty much right around here, 86, 87, that would break the trend, which we have not been able to do for 6 or 7 months. So if we would break 86, 8,700 US dollars, that would be huge to me. I don't really care about 10,000 at this point. 10,000 was like the previous lower high way back here, but if we would be able to break this, then I think this would be a huge momentum shift. So you wouldn't even need to get to 10,000 to really get optimistic, in my opinion. Pretty much like right around this area is like the big deal to me. It says here the bulls are waiting to see if 7100 price holds. Asked what will move Bitcoin to 10,000. Moro said slow and steady growth will be needed along with volume. And we have been seeing this this uptrend we've seen since the 22nd of August has been pretty slow and has been pretty steady. Most of these candles have been green candles, pretty significant ones as well. A few $100s per day, roughly, or about $100 or $200 per day. We do see a red candle every now and again, kind of just a consolidation day or two. But so far, this pattern has been seen, at least to me, it seems very healthy. It's, you don't see huge candles like this, like we were seeing. Look at the last two runs we had. You see this candle, like $1,000, more than $1,000 candle. These two daily candles combined equaled about another $1,000, and we're not seeing that. We're seeing much slower, much steadier growth and upward momentum there. It also says here in the article that Moore said what you need to see is the less violent moves up 5%, 10%, and a slow and steady growth across the exchanges, which I would argue we are seeing. What I also think is important is I think the market now understands that the SEC's ETF approval is not anytime soon. So with that news kind of behind everyone, which I agree with, I think most people don't really care about an ETF right now. I've been saying that for maybe a week, but I also don't think it will really impact the price, which is good because we don't want the entire market price hinging on an ETF denial. That's obviously not healthy. We don't want the entire market price relying on any one event. I think the bears have realized that they've run out of steam. He added, in addition, on the spot trading side, there were very few sellers around the 6,000 level. Very true. 6,000 so far has been very good about kind of bouncing right up off 6,000. We don't spend too much time down there. If we do, we seem to go right back to 6,000. We have gone to 57 and 5,800 at these 4 or 5 bottoms over the last 7 months, but we always return to 6,000 so far, and we've already bounced very nicely off of that. And the very last time that we did bounce, it was even more drastic than the time prior to that, which could even be seen as a good sign that really does want to be cemented as the bottom there. The question is, are the bulls here to stay? He said a strong buy-side demand has yet to materialize. One question, whether the market returns to the 6,000 level because the bulls are still waiting to see if 7,100 price holds. So I think in terms of answering that question, strong buying volume, which we clearly haven't seen, right? And that's very indicative of these smaller candles, which is healthy, but at the same time, it's showing there is an insane buy volume that we'd want to see eventually. But I think this slow, steady volume to start off is exactly what we need. I don't really like the idea of starting off with insane buying volume, because then usually that's coupled with insane selling volume, and we get right back to where we were. I mean, that's kind of this pattern right here is like the perfect example of that, in my opinion. I think that strong buying volume will return at certain key points. To me, I really think that strong buying volume will return if something like this level right here, if that was broken. I think that would be the time when people would really step in and say, you know what, this break in this overall trend for the past 8 months was confirmed. Now it's time to buy because we're most likely going to go higher. The thing is, if we'd be able to break these lower highs, that would be something from a technical standpoint that we have not done this year. We haven't broken these lower highs. We haven't been able to do it. So if this were to be accomplished, then I think then people would step in. That's when you would see some FOMO really start to kick in. That's when you would start to see a lot of optimism. But until that happens, kind of just be more cautious, especially on the sidelines, and just kind of relax and wait and see. This, to me, is really the big thing right there. But in addition to that, 8,500 is huge, breaking that lower high from the end of July. But in addition to that, this trend line and this 200-day moving average is again huge. So that's right around 8,000 roughly. About 7,600 for the trend line. A little, maybe like $200 or $300 more, depending on how we keep going up. It could be around 8,000 for the 200-day moving average there. So really, I mean, to make it as simple as possible, this whole circle right here, if we would get anywhere into this circle, which is only about, $400 or $500 Bitcoin price above where we are right now, then that's where I could see some optimism. But again, if we would get more in the middle of this to the higher end of this, then I think it would be insanely optimistic for a reversal to really potentially be in play there. And the article does end as well, just talking about CME Bitcoin futures volume doubling. CNBC's Bob Pisani is quoted here saying, "What's important here is the increase in futures volume on CME has occurred while Bitcoin went from 6,000 in June to over 8,000 and then all the way back down to 6,000. It means that some traders are perfectly willing to trade Bitcoin for futures on the way up and also on the way down. It seems like a more active market out there."